ways to improve trust and fairness in this culture? Oh, okay. So that's a hard one because unfortunately, trust takes time to build. And so, in order for you to improve trust in any kind of environment, you have to repeatedly show that you are trustworthy. So, if let's say people share information, if maybe their concern is confidentiality, then you want to get to the stage where you are consistently confidential and people know that they can say something, they don't have to worry about hearing it anywhere else. If trust is that people don't trust that when they say something, they're going to be treated fairly, then you want to get to the stage where people start practicing treating people fairly. So the only way to build trust is to do what is right and do it repeatedly. And then people will begin to believe that it is true. Otherwise, you can't just do it once. You can't tell them one time. You can't say it because people trust what they experience, not just what you say. So you could say, no, it's an open door environment and we are willing to accept feedback. But everybody remembers that the last time somebody gave feedback, they suddenly got assigned to a horrible job or they didn't get their promotion, then nobody's going to believe what is said. They're going to believe what happened. So unfortunately, the only way to build trust is over time and repeated practice of fair behavior. I see also we're saying transparency and confidentiality are important as well. Yes. Yes, trust is so easy to break, and it is easy to break and very difficult to build. And if you've built up enough currency, if an organization has always been fair to its staff, always treated the staff well, and they've always, the staff feel that they can trust management, and management does something shocking or disappointing one time, they have a chance because they have a track record that people will say, well, I don't know what happened there, but let's watch and see what happens. And then if things get back on track, then people say, oh, okay, all right. So that was an anomaly. But if you haven't had that track record and you have people who are worried and concerned, and then everything you do keeps them in that state of never feeling that they can trust management, then that's not going to change until management's behavior changes and is more in keeping with what they say. When organizations say that they care about their staff, they need to be able to demonstrate that repeatedly, consistently, over time. We also have some comments being shared in the chat from our other participants, so please feel free to pay attention to the chat as well. Some very good comments coming from Joan with regards to identifying the root cause of the trust deficit as well. So thank you very much. Good sharing going on. All right, so I mentioned the Myers-Briggs type indicator because that is the instrument that I tend to use a lot when I'm looking at personality preferences and behaviors. And just to say a little bit about that, the reason why I didn't just talk about that as part of this assessment or as part of the session is I find that oftentimes a lot of people will think more about the instrument rather than what it is being used for. So the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs type indicator, like any other assessment, really is intended to help you better understand yourself. It's not the be all and end all. It isn't giving you all the information in the world. It is helping you to understand yourself. It is a starting point. And with that, you then continue to examine, to think about, and to pay attention to how you respond in situations, to what works for you and what does not. And the MBTI has 4 scales and it looks at 4 different things. And the first one is extroversion or introversion. It looks at where we get our energy from, how we are energized, whether external or internal. The second one looks at how we take in information. Are we detail oriented? Are we conscientious? Or are we focused on the big picture? Are we looking at the future? Are we more future oriented? How do we make decisions? Are we making them on the basis of logical thought, or are we making them on the basis of emotion? And then how do we organize our world? Do we like to plan and organize, or do we like to adapt to whatever comes our way? And so each one of these four scales, they're considered dichotomies because they are two extremes on a continuing scale. And for each one of us, just as with the other things that I mentioned when I talked about the big five that the psychologists identify, you have all of these within you. And what we do, each individual does, is we make a choice each day on which side of the scale we are going to spend the majority of our time. And so that then determines how you are energized, how you interact with the world, how you make your decisions, and it determines what it takes in order for you to be successful. Now, one of the things that a lot of organizations have done is you may take this and you may use it with your staff, and you would realize that when those individuals then start to think about who they are and what they need, they are better prepared to interact with others who may be different than them. So if you know that you're a person who is introverted and who's energized by being alone, then it means that when you have to go out and you have to deal with the big crowd in your workplace, you have to deal with the lots of customers, then you understand that that is going to drain your energy. And you want to take practices, you want to engage in practices, you want to take action that is going to help you be prepared, be energized, so that you have enough to give into that situation and then be prepared to re-energize yourself after the situation. So that's why the self-awareness matters. That's why self-awareness is key to success and self-awareness is key to high performance. Because only when you have that information are you able to set yourself up to be successful. So I've mentioned, as I said, that the extrovert, outward turning and inward turning. And oftentimes people mistake these for whether or not you are talkative or whether or not you're quiet. People will often say that extroverts are flaky because they always want to run around and they're always talking. People may say that introverts are quiet and shy and they don't like people. Both of those are extreme statements and they're judgments, and they're usually not true. You will find that this is really only talking about where you get your energy. Because you can have very friendly introverts and you can have very non-friendly extroverts. So to assume that because a person falls into either one of these descriptors, that you know how they're going to respond in every situation is incorrect. So think about that for yourself. You may be extroverted or introverted, but you perhaps have learned skills that help you cope in various situations that you face in your life. With this one, the sensing and intuition that looks at how we take in information, it also looks at, are we more present oriented, focused, or are we more future oriented and focused? Are you the kind of person who is thinking about the details here and now? Are you taking in information in a sequential way? So as you do things at work, are you the kind of person who needs to have the details? Are you the kind of person who needs to have the specifics happening and to have that presented to you in a 1, then a 2, then a 3, that kind of sequential way? Or are you someone who can get information randomly in any way? You just pull pieces together and make connections as you go. Knowing that helps you to determine when you are at work or you are engaging in whatever practices you if it's work or it's hobbies or it's your personal life. When you are engaging in any type of activity, then how do you need to get information in order to be most effective? So think about that. Also, it makes you, or it leads you to a point where you want to decide, do you want to be involved in long range planning activities because you find that exciting and you're good at it? Or do you prefer to just deal with short term and more specific here and now type of activities? Also, people with the sensing preference like more routine. People with the intuition like to have more change happening and more opportunities to do different things. These are the people who will say often that they get bored easily. The next scale in this, which is the decision making one, talks about whether or not when you're making a decision, you put yourself into it and you consider, if it were me, how would I want to be treated? Or do you step back and just see it as a personal distance? It's, sorry, as an impersonal distance. So you don't get involved in it. You just use logic, you use analysis, and you make the decision on that basis. So it's about, that's why it's considered thinking versus feeling. It also looks at whether you like harmony in your environment or if you don't have a problem with conflict. Because there are some people in the world who cannot work effectively in an environment that has a lot of conflict going on because they are seeing themselves in that situation and they feel unsettled. They feel like it's not a comfortable place for them to be. And so if you find that you are one of those people, then it is more likely that you make decisions based on your feelings. You feel what's happening and you may feel other people's concern and disquiet and uncertainty. And that has an impact on your ability to make decisions and to move forward. And then the last one, which is perhaps the most fun scale of all, is the J and the P scale, which is the lifestyle scale. And this one looks at whether individuals like to live a planned and organized life, or if they like to adapt to whatever comes. And the reason why this is the most fun scale, as I say that, is because every time I'm using this assessment in any group, and participants start to talk about whether they fall into the category of those that like to be organized or those that like to be spontaneous. The spontaneous people always think that this is the most fun in the world because just being spontaneous is who they are. And they are not going to, they can adapt to behaving with some of those judging behaviors when they have to. So you may find a spontaneous person who at work, they're so planned, they're so organized, but in their personal lives, they are flexible to whatever happens and whatever comes. It also says with this preference scale that there are some individuals who like to make decisions quickly. It's like they take the information they have and they make a decision right away. They close off. They're not open to considering anything. We've made a decision. Let's move on. We have a deadline that we're working towards. The other side of the scale are open to more information as it comes. So they may have a deadline, they have a project they're working on, but they're saying, but are you sure that we have everything? We still need to get more information. I don't think we should make a decision. We shouldn't close off yet. Let's keep looking. And they may want to get more information and do more research. So depending on which one of these you think you are best described as, you would recognize that there's certain behaviors that you may want to adopt. Because if you are in an environment, and I've met people who are in a military environment who have that spontaneous approach to life as their preference, but they have learned how to adapt to the more planned and organized way of living. So you may recognize that this is your preference, but it's not going to help you be successful in your work, or it's not going to help you be successful in whatever profession you're choosing. So you then want to identify what behaviors you have to adopt in order to be successful in the reality of your situation. So that's the Myers-Briggs type indicator. And as I mentioned, it really is an assessment that I use. I use it as part of leadership development, as part of training and so on. But there are options for you to do this online if you find that it's something that you are interested in and you want to know more information about. You can go online, do research and look it up. Or of course you can reach out to me and I can answer your questions as well. But I have found that it's a very useful tool for helping you to understand yourself and sometimes understanding those around you. And a lot of people, even though I may do this for them in a work situation, they will often then start to think, well, what does this mean for my partner, my spouse, my children, those kinds of things. And they would want them to do it as well. And then they begin to consider, well, maybe this is why my daughter does that, or maybe this is why my husband or my wife does that. And this is why they always say that about me. So just recognize that the chances are that the people around you do not have the same preferences as you. They do not have the same personality as you. And part of what you're doing as well as you develop that self-awareness and you begin to recognize that difference, part of what you want to do is get to a point where you're more accepting of their difference from you. Because whether we know it or not, we're often judgmental of others. And so we think that our way of being works. We've figured out how that works, and sometimes their way of being does not. And we can sometimes be critical and present things in a way that can make the other person feel like what they're doing is not right. And remember what we said before, there's nothing wrong with you. There is something right with you. They just may be different from us. So now we're going to come to a few key strategies, and I do recognize that we are coming close to the end of our time together. So here's what I would say to you when it comes to managing your energy flow. Recognize that energy can be flowing internally or it can be flowing externally, and figure out where you fall on the spectrum. Depending on where you fall on the spectrum, you then want to have routines with breaks in them that help you to re-energize yourself. I recently was working with a client who is an extrovert. And as an extrovert, it means that he is energized by interacting with an external environment. But he had come to a point in his life where he was no longer interacting with the external environment like he used to. He'd come to an age where he didn't want to be partying all the time. He didn't want to be just hanging out with friends doing crazy things. And so he came to a way of living where he was shutting himself down, staying at home more. And because of COVID, that was kind of supporting him, isolating himself, being alone. He would call friends and talk to them on the friends and family and talk to them on the phone sometimes, maybe have a short conversation here and there, but he wasn't getting together with them. And so part of my discussion with him was to recognize that as an extrovert, he needs that external interaction. He needs to get engaged with people in order to build his energy up. So what we agreed as an approach for him was when he comes home from work and he's tired and he's drained, whereas for an introvert, a lot of what you require is to go to be by yourself and to spend some time, letting your mind relax and engaging in what you want to engage in as an individual. For the extrovert, I had to agree with him that what he would do is find people he could reach out to. And maybe because if you can't bring people together because they're not in your bubble as we're dealing with COVID, then maybe you want to have group calls where you get people online, and maybe plan online parties where you're all talking and laughing and joking, even if it is just that, you're each bringing your own bottle because, your bottle like you. But you want to have an activity where you can feel that you're getting energized, that you're engaging with people, and it's not just a blank screen in front of you. Because for the extrovert, that matters. So know what you need and then plan how you are going to get it. I also have said, I see an introvert down here saying that I'm loving COVID so much. I have energy to burn. And that's wonderful. I think that has been glorious for all of us who have any kind of introversion bent, but it has been such a drain for the poor extroverts. And so I had to say to another young lady I was working with as well, start having conversations with Zoom or on some kind of platform where you can see the people you're talking to, because that makes a difference. Try to spend time outside where you can look up at the sky and connect with the environment, because that makes a difference in terms of re-energizing extroverts. Make sure that you have a morning routine that re-energizes you. Have an end of day routine as well. And have steps throughout your day to build your energy up and to keep your energy going. So don't let yourself get to the point you're so depleted that you can't keep going, because having that energy is what allows you to feel empowered enough to get things done. The next one, with regards to if you are strategic and future oriented or detail and present focused, if you're specific and detailed, recognize that being big picture matters. And the opposite is true as well. If you are big picture, also recognize that specifics and details matter. So either you're going to develop a skill and technique that's going to allow you to do the other side of the scale, or you are going to have a plan for managing around it. So if it's something that you are required to do yourself, then start engaging in those activities because you have it within you. It just takes more effort and energy to do, but you can do it. It's like if you're right-handed and you had to use your left hand, you can. It's not perfect. It takes a lot more energy and a lot more thought, but you can do it if you had to. And it's the same thing with your preferences and your personality, your behaviors. So when it comes now to being the kind of person who's present, focused, know that you get energized by keeping things running. So the reason why the world works is because a lot of the people who are present focused keep things running, keep them on track, and keep them happening as they should. That is how you get excited. That's how you get energized. That's how you feel accomplished. And for those people who are future oriented, you want to take the opportunity when you can step up, get involved if it's not something that you're doing right now, to get involved in that long-term planning, that strategic thinking and strategic management, because that's where your strength may be. And that's how you can shine in an organization. So take the opportunity if it is presented to you, because that will help you see that high performance that you want to get to. Okay, going the wrong way. Okay, the third one, agreeableness. Now, this is the one about connections and about human beings working together and coming together. And so remember that this is a skill. And some people are going to be very agreeable and some people are not very agreeable. And what you want to do is know where you fall on that scale and figure out what is needed for you to be effective. So I've worked with people in organizations where being friendly and nice is not a part of the culture because of the work that they do. So for example, if you're working with police officers, they need to be humane, but being nice and sweet and cuddly and warm is not a part of their culture because it can come across, depending on what role they're playing, it can come across as weakness. And for some of their roles, they need to be able to show strength, and that comes from their emotion as well. So where you fall on the agreeableness scale is important depending on what environment you are in. Now, it is also important for those same officers to understand that when they leave their work and they go home to deal with their children and their spouses at home, that they need to go with a different orientation. And so that is perhaps sometimes where the challenge happens, when you have to figure out how to move from what you spend the majority of your day doing into what helps you to be more effective in another situation. An important part of this as well is being able to build trust. Because when you are able to build trust, you're more comfortable with the other people around you. So that's where, if you are in an environment that requires you to be comfortable, requires you to make connections, requires you to be friendly, but your experience is that when you do that, it's a problem, then you are not going to do it easily. So you want to identify people that you feel comfortable with. You know, make a friend at work, make a colleague that you feel comfortable being yourself with, and allow that then to help you get to a point where you can show more of that agreeableness that is within you. Build your network. That is part of the connecting with people. Allow other people to get to know you. And then consider other people's point of view, because this is a big one, unfortunately, for this is where a lot of that agreeableness comes in. There are a lot of people who don't take into consideration other people's point of view, and so they don't feel like they're being heard. And you want also to consider the feedback that you're sharing before you share it. It really matters sometimes, not so much what you say, but how you say it, and maybe what you say depending also on where you say it. And then the last one is to remember this openness to experience. You want to be someone who values learning new things. If you often feel like you're overwhelmed by all the information out there in the world, because there's a lot and a lot of it is interesting, start small. Start small and build up as you go. For those people who don't feel like they can be spontaneous, I say to you, plan your spontaneity. So if you're the kind of person who likes structure and likes organizing, you don't like surprises, it is okay for you to be someone who will plan your spontaneity. You know, say that you're going to be spontaneous on June 12th between the hours of 6 and 10. That's okay. The important point is that you're being open to something that is a different way from how you always are. And then recognize that whatever change you want to make in your life, change takes time. So it will take time in order for you to become that different and become more comfortable with being open to experiences. Emotional intelligence is an important part of dealing with your own personality and dealing with the other people around you. Being emotionally aware and getting to the point where you're comfortable expressing those emotions, those things are important. It helps you to build your interpersonal relationships. It helps you to get to the point where you can consider problem solving without being overwhelmed by your emotion. And it helps you also to become better at dealing with stress. So you get to the point where you can be more resilient and you can bounce back from things. So as we close, are there any questions? Okay. And I am recognizing it's 8:01. Thank you very much for staying all the way through to the end. And so my summary, my closing thoughts for you are this. Remember as you go through this process that there is nothing wrong with you. There are many things that are right with you. And so you want to develop a clear awareness of your strengths so that you can use them to propel your success. And you want to decide how you're going to manage around your weaknesses. You want to be clear about your definition for success. Be clear about what success means to you. Your definition for success does not have to be like anybody else's. It is what works for you, what energizes you, what your values are based on. Be deliberate about the behaviors that you choose to adopt because that is what will support your ability to be successful. Develop a plan for managing your energy every day. If you are introverted, know what it takes to re-energize on your own. And if you are extroverted, know what it takes for you to re-energize when you need people around you, how you're going to get them and how you're going to connect. And then work on adjusting your mindset for success. Know that it is possible for us all to be successful. We each have what it takes to be successful. And so that is why you want to change that voice in your head and you want to get to the point where you see yourself not just as that little kitten that is sitting in front of the mirror, but as the tiger that you can ultimately become. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for joining me this evening. It has been a pleasure sharing this information with you. As I said at the beginning, I'm very excited about human behavior, about our ability to be successful, to change our perspective of each other, and to recognize that we have what it takes in order to survive transition and in order to thrive now and in the years that are coming. So if you require any additional information or clarification, you can feel free to reach out to me either to my website, btpcoaching.com, or you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn, or you can contact me on Instagram.